Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. The first treadmills were invented as a method to punish English prisoners in 1818, but now people use them simply to stay in shape. Earwax is a mixture of sweat, skin, hair, and debris held together by a fluid produced by glands in the ear canal. Although it may seem unpleasant, it is essential for maintaining ear health. There were 13 newlywed couples celebrating their honeymoon on the Titanic. Unfortunately, none of them survived the collision and subsequent sinking. There's a fish called the blue lingcod that has blue-colored flesh. However, when it is cooked, the color disappears and it looks like any other fish. Only some specimens have this color, and it is due to a variation in a pigment. During one day, your mouth produces between 16.9 and 50.7 fluid ounces of saliva. Approximately 75,000 flowers must be hand-collected to produce 1.10 pounds of saffron. That 1.10 pounds costs $5,000. When the first shopping carts were introduced, invented by Sylvan Goldman, many stores had to hire people whose only job was to push them so customers would copy them and get used to using them. Hands or other parts of the body that have nerve damage do not wrinkle when they stay in water for a long time, unlike what normally happens. If your second toe is longer than your big toe, then you have a condition called Morton's toe, which usually does not affect the people who have it. The feet of the Statue of Liberty have this condition. The sword-billed hummingbird is the only bird that has a beak longer than its own body. Its beak and tongue are so long because of its nectar diet from certain flowers that are difficult to reach. Freeze-dried instant coffee is produced by brewing liquid coffee, freezing it, and removing the ice through sublimation using vacuum chambers. It is a method that may seem excessive, but it is the best way to preserve the aromas and oils of the coffee, unlike the traditional method of drying it with hot air. According to catalogs, the Lego piece that appears most often in current sets is the 1x2 plate, which is widely used for detailing constructions and making connections. The 1x1 plate is also among the most produced pieces. It was discovered that dolphins intentionally hit or chew on poisonous pufferfish to get high, instantly losing their chances of obtaining their driver's licenses. In 2014, police in the Netherlands managed to capture people who were growing marijuana. They succeeded because they noticed that their house was the only roof without snow, revealing the temperature-controlled room. All the spies Hitler thought he had in England during the Second World War were actually double agents working for the British government. Every time you breathe, you inhale around 50 bacteria that are potentially dangerous to health. But generally, all of them are destroyed by the immune system before they cause any harm. The respiratory system has mucus and small cilia that trap and expel many microorganisms before they reach the lungs. Plants appeared before seeds. According to fossils, the first plants that were similar to modern moss reproduced through single-celled spores. Seeds would appear 150 million years later. These appeared in the first trees and advanced vascular plants, which allowed better protection of the embryo and easier dispersal in different environments. In a classic cognitive dissonance experiment, participants were paid $1 or $20 for doing the same one-hour task that was especially boring. When it ended, those who had received $1 said it had been stimulating, while those who received 20 said they had hated it. Girdling is the term used to describe the removal of a strip of bark from the circumference of a branch or the trunk of a tree. If the main trunk of a tree is girdled, it will die if it cannot regrow from above to close the wound. Most cats do not like to drink water if it is too close to their food source. Always keep your cat's water and food supplies separate so they do not become dehydrated. This behavior comes from their instincts, as in the wild, they avoid contaminating their water source with food remains or possible bacteria. There's a side effect of sleep deprivation called microsleep, in which a person falls asleep for a few seconds or even a few minutes without realizing it. It is extremely dangerous and has in fact contributed to a large number of traffic accidents. So sleep before driving. It is dangerous. In 2013, PayPal accidentally placed more than $92 quadrillion into the account of public relations executive Chris Reynolds. PayPal admitted its mistake and offered to donate money to a cause of Reynolds' choosing. It is actually possible to make the eyeball pop out of its socket, which is known as exophthalmos, by blowing your nose too hard, vomiting, or excessive coughing. The good news is that, if you are brave enough, you can simply place it back. Tulips were once the most expensive flower. In the 1700s, tulips were more valuable than most people's homes and cost nearly 10 times what an average worker earned in a year. This phenomenon, known as tulip mania, was one of the first recorded economic bubbles, where prices rose uncontrollably before suddenly collapsing, causing major losses for many traders. There is a phenomenon called crown shyness, in which, in some species of trees, their canopies, when fully grown, do not touch each other. The treetops form channel-like gaps, and the strangest part is that scientists are not sure why it happens. According to a survey by the American Psychological Association, the most stressed people in the United States are millennials, who are individuals between the ages of 18 and 35, women, parents with children under 18 years old, and low-income households. The main source of stress was money. A frog's tongue is approximately one-third the length of its entire body. In comparison, if a human had a tongue of the same proportion, it would reach down to our navel. In addition, it is attached at the front of the mouth, which allows it to project outward with great speed to catch prey. Its surface is sticky and can retract in fractions of a second, making it easier to capture moving insects. Discarding the peel of an apple removes 50% of its total fiber content and 30% of its vitamin C. The Indian pipe plant is one of the few plants that does not contain chlorophyll, so it does not perform photosynthesis. It feeds on a parasitic fungus that takes its nutrients from other trees that do have chlorophyll. Unregistered gold miners in Mongolia who do not have permits are commonly known as ninja miners because of the special container they carry on their backs, which looks like a shell from the Ninja Turtles. The Hyundai automobile logo, in addition to being a stylized H, also represents a handshake between a salesperson representing the company and a customer. Bumblebees often do warm-up exercises when it is cold before flying to avoid falling while they are in the air. According to the law in different countries, biting someone with your natural teeth is a lesser offense and has fewer consequences than biting someone with dentures, since they can be considered a tool to cause harm. The rivalry between the companies Puma and Adidas was so intense that the German town where their factories were located, Herzogenaurach, became known as the town of twisted necks, because locals would always start a conversation by first looking at the brand of shoes the other person was wearing. Employees who portrayed different cartoon characters at Disneyland never break character. They even receive special training sessions for signing autographs, so they can always sign in the style of the character they are portraying. In Belgium, voting is mandatory, and citizens are automatically registered. For that reason, more than 90% of the eligible population participates in elections, since failing to do so can result in a fine. This rule has existed since the end of the 19th century and seeks to guarantee broad participation in national and local elections. In France, before the common telegraph became popular, there was a visual telegraph communication system that consisted of a network of towers with movable arms that transmitted coded messages between them, using light and the position of the arms to represent letters and words. There is a Scotch whiskey called Lafroig that, if you buy a bottle, gives you 1 square foot of land in Scotland as a gift, complete with a title of ownership. However, this was only for a limited time, and only 700,000 people obtained their piece of Scottish land. In countries where voting is mandatory, even if the penalties are not very severe, such as in Australia, turnout is much higher than in other places. But phenomena such as the so-called donkey vote also occur, where candidates who appear first on the ballot receive more votes. Barcode scanners actually read the spaces between the black bars, not the black bars themselves. These devices detect patterns of reflected light, since white areas reflect more light than black ones, allowing the encoded information to be interpreted. This system is based on precise contrasts that represent numbers and specific data used in products and inventory systems. Although the most valuable company in the world today is Apple, it is far from being the most valuable of all time. That title would belong to the Dutch East India Company, which was primarily dedicated to the global spice trade and, adjusted for inflation, reached a value of up to $8 trillion. Apple has only reached $3 trillion. A trillion is a million. The board game Chinese checkers has nothing Chinese about it. It was invented in Germany in 1892 and was named that way for marketing reasons. It is a simplified variant of the American game Halma. We have been deceived. Fortune cookies are another thing that seems Chinese but was not invented in China. The children's game Ring Around the Rosie refers to the Great Plague of London in 1665. The ring around the rosy refers to the pink ring-shaped rash that someone with the plague would develop. The pocket full of posies refers to the fact that people filled their pockets and bags with sweet-smelling herbs or bouquets because it was believed that the disease was spread through bad smells. This is Gunner, the air-raid mermaid dog. During World War II, he alerted aircraft personnel that Japanese planes were approaching because his hearing was very sharp and precise. He was adopted by the Royal Australian Air Force and became famous for detecting aircraft before the equipment of the time, saving lives by giving early warnings during enemy attacks. An analysis was conducted on the conversations people have in everyday life, and it was discovered that complaints and gossip make up as much as 80% of what people talk about. Some studies on social communication suggest that much of these conversations also serve to strengthen social bonds and share information within groups. People and the media tend to remember or exaggerate predictions that come true, while incorrect ones are ignored as if they never existed, even though there are more of them. This phenomenon was named the Jeane-Dixon effect. Dixon was a famous astrologer and supposed psychic to whom some predictions that came true are attributed, but many more that failed. During the Cold War, Russia produced maps of the Arctic region of Canada that were so detailed that many vessels still use them today instead of official charts, because they are more accurate. Some of the oldest sunglasses in the world were discovered on Baffin Island in northern Canada. They were created by the Inuit of the Arctic. Also known as snow goggles, they were made from bone, leather, or wood with small slits for vision, designed to protect the eyes from snow blindness caused by the sun. Noah Webster, the creator of the first American dictionary, learned 26 languages in order to understand and research the origins of the language of his own country, so he could write it. His work laid the foundation for modern American English, standardizing spelling and differentiating it from British English, which had a lasting impact on education and cultural identity in the United States. The Silicon Valley entrepreneur Elizabeth Holmes once had a fortune of $4.5 billion, but she lost everything overnight after the fraud carried out by her health technology company Theranos was discovered. She is currently in prison. The company Intel, which once dominated the processor world, has been struggling for several years now. Its new next-generation chips have not delivered the expected performance, which cut into its profit margins and led to massive layoffs, including its chief executive officer. Rivals such as AMD, TSMC, and NVIDIA have left it behind. In 1859, a solar storm caused failures in telegraph communications worldwide. A similar event today would cause problems in power grids, satellites, GPS systems, and technology in general. The cost of the damage would be more than $1 trillion. There's a bacterium in the human digestive system that helps regulate food allergies. People who take many antibiotics at an early age have reduced levels of this bacterium, which increases their likelihood of developing allergies. The largest tire graveyard in the world is in Sulaybia, Kuwait. Each year, giant holes are dug in the desert and filled with old tires. There are already 7 million tires there, and the landfill is so large that it is visible from space. For years, it has represented an environmental risk due to potential fires and pollution. So recently, projects have been launched to recycle much of those tires and reduce their impact in the area. The state of Illinois has banned exfoliating facial washes because the microbeads they contain are so small that they pass through water treatment facilities and end up back in the water supply. These microbeads, usually made of plastic, can accumulate in rivers and lakes, affecting aquatic life, so the measure is part of environmental efforts to reduce pollution. Actress Winona Ryder mentioned in an interview that after playing the character Lydia in the movie Beetlejuice, she suffered bullying at her school. They even beat her and called her a witch. She said that sometime later, one of the women who had bothered her asked her for an autograph in a cafe, and she refused. Ryder will play Lydia again in the new Beetlejuice movie. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson is partially responsible for the removal of Pluto from the group of planets in the solar system. When he was director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York in the year 2000, he removed Pluto from the exhibits. Despite receiving letters from children complaining, he was right. Years later, Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet. A prototype design for the euro currency in the 1990s, when it was first going to enter circulation, featured a unicorn illustration. But unfortunately, it was not chosen. Of the 20 common openings in chess, the one considered the worst of all is the Barnes opening. whose disadvantages include controlling only one central square, exposing the king, and hindering the development of the knight. On January 1st, 1976, the day relaxed marijuana laws went into effect in California, Danny Finegood, an art student at Cal State Northridge, and some of his friends took $50 worth of fabric to the Hollywood sign and changed it to read Hollyweed. They used the prank as a school project, which earned them a grade of A. Hippopotamuses like to lick crocodiles. They do not pose a threat, so crocodiles tolerate it. This behavior has been observed in African rivers where both species share habitat. And although hippos can be very aggressive, in these interactions they usually appear curious or calm, creating unusual moments of coexistence between two normally dangerous animals. It is believed that hiccups are an ancestral trait or evolutionary remnant of the amphibian breathing used by the first animals that lived on land and had both lungs and gills. Some scientists compare this reflex with the mechanism that tadpoles use to move water over their gills before developing lungs. A murmuration of starlings is a natural phenomenon in which thousands of starlings fly in synchrony, forming interesting patterns in the sky, moving like a cloud of a single organism in a rapid and aesthetic way. Each bird mainly responds to its 7 nearest neighbors, creating large-scale correlations that have been studied for a long time. They do it as a social mechanism and to defend themselves from predators. In 1967, Paul McCartney allowed a stranger who claimed to be Jesus Christ to enter a Beatles recording session. Later, he said in an interview that he probably was not, but in case he was real, he did not want to be the one who refused him entry. Authorities in France prevented a girl from being named Nutella and only approved the shortened form, Ella. The judge in charge said it was not allowed because it would be a reason for bullying as she grew up. Instead of keeping your deceased loved one in an urn on the mantelpiece, now, thanks to the company Bios Urn, you can preserve them in the form of a tree. Bios Urn created Bios Incube, which is an incubator that monitors and grows trees from human ashes in people's homes. The beautiful white sand beaches you find in Hawaii are mostly made of fish poop. Larger parrotfish produce up to 840 pounds of white sand per year. These fish grind coral while feeding on algae and then expel the remains as fine sand, constantly contributing to the formation of tropical beaches. In 2018, a security guard at a museum in France was tired, so he sat in a chair he found nearby and broke it. Shortly afterward, he realized that it was a 200-year-old chair that had belonged to Napoleon. It had to be restored, and the guard was not fired. He only had to attend a disciplinary hearing. In zoos around the world, for better care of young cheetahs, they assign companion dogs for them to play with and learn social cues. This helps reduce the stress of living in captivity. Rembrandt's painting, Portrait of Jacob de Guignes III from 1632, has been stolen 4 times. It only measures 11.8 by 9.8 inches, so it has earned the nickname the Pocket Rembrandt. When NASA's Space Shuttle program was in operation, it cost $54,500 per pound to transport something into space, whereas now, with SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, this cost has been reduced to $1,234 per pound. According to researchers at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, mothers who provide support and affection during their children's preschool years can increase the growth of their children's brains. They found that children who were nurtured in their early years had a larger hippocampus, the part of the brain linked to learning, memory, and emotional regulation. There is a school called Ordinary Miracle in Yoshkar-Ola, Russia, that looks like a fairy tale castle. A man named Sergei Mamayev had it built for his wife, who wanted to teach at a school that children would actually want to attend. Forget going to school there. I want to live there like a princess. The planet Venus has such a slow rotation that it takes the equivalent of 243 Earth days to complete one full turn, and a human could even walk faster than that. Meanwhile, to complete one orbit around the Sun, it takes only 225 Earth days. That means a year lasts less than a day on Venus. To produce 1 tablespoon of honey, different bees must collectively fly a total of around 2,485 miles, visiting about 90,000 flowers in total. This estimate is based on observations and is an approximation. Producing honey is one of the most impressive examples of teamwork in nature. In Japan, a toy called Mugen Puti Puti has been popular for several years. It was designed to give the same sensation as popping bubble wrap, except an infinite number of times. In 1999, Lena Howe, a physicist at Harvard, became the first person to slow light to just 56 feet per second using a machine called a Bose-Einstein condensate. Just 2 years later, she managed to stop light completely. The most famous phrase in Spider-Man, "With great power comes great responsibility," was actually mentioned in the first live-action version of Superman in 1948 by the father of Clark Kent. This was 14 years before Uncle Ben said it in the first Spider-Man comic. At the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, the Lithuanian basketball team had to accept financial support from other countries due to the turbulent exit from the Soviet Union. This resulted in one of the most unusual uniforms ever seen in sports, which was sponsored by the rock band Grateful Dead. All of the concrete used to build the Hoover Dam, a total of 4.3 million cubic yards, would have been enough to build a 2-lane highway from Los Angeles to New York. It was completed in 1936. The most well-known cut for a diamond is the brilliant cut. When it is done perfectly on a round diamond, something called the Cupid effect appears, which is a pattern of arrows and hearts that can be seen when light is shined through it. In 1996, Norwegian explorer Børge Ausland completed the first solo crossing of Antarctica from coast to coast, nearly 1,865 miles. Years later, in 2001, he did the same at the North Pole. He crossed from Siberia to Canada on foot. The Maricopa harvester ant is considered one of the most venomous insects in the world. 12 of their stings can kill a 4.4-pound animal. Their venom is highly toxic and is designed to defend the colony from predators. These ants typically live in arid areas, and when they feel threatened, they can attack in groups, greatly increasing the danger of their stings. All Oscar winners, before accepting the award, must sign a contract stating that if they want to sell the statuette, they are required to offer it first to the Academy in exchange for $1. Despite this, it is estimated that more than 150 of these awards have been sold privately. The personal sushi chef of the then leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il, managed to escape the country in 2001 when he asked permission to go buy a sea urchin to prepare a special dish. Sometime later, he wrote an autobiography with all the details of what he experienced in that position. Arachibutyrophobia is the name for the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of your mouth. Although it sounds unusual, this type of specific phobia is often related to uncomfortable experiences or unpleasant sensations. Walt Disney used to visit his parks in disguise and would test ride operators to make sure they were not rushing guests. He was also known for walking through the facilities discreetly to observe details of cleanliness, customer service, and operations, which allowed him to maintain high standards in the visitor experience. Jim Henson, before creating the Muppets, made a series of commercials for the coffee brand Wilkins, in which a character similar to Kermit the Frog behaved violently toward another puppet because it did not drink that coffee. The campaign was a success, which allowed Henson to launch The Muppets Show. When climbing to an altitude of more than 63,000 feet, the Armstrong limit is reached. Atmospheric pressure is so low that water evaporates at body temperature, so the air cannot sustain oxygen exchange in the lungs. This is solved by adding pressure, either in cabins or in pressurized suits. Unlike most fruits, avocados do not ripen while still attached to the tree, thanks to special enzymes they release. This allows them to be stored on the tree for up to 7 months. That is why avocados are available year-round. Giraffes can go longer without drinking water than camels, 21 days, while camels only last 15. Compared to humans, we can only survive 3 days without water. Rhinotelexomania is the scientific word for nose picking. Rhino means nose, telex means habitual picking, and mania means frenzy or compulsion. The term is mainly used in medical and psychological contexts, especially when the behavior is compulsive. People have been arrested in many countries for sitting on sea turtles and posting it on social media. It is considered a crime in many parts of the world. Sea turtles are protected species, and handling or riding them can cause serious injuries to their shells or stress that affects their survival. Dogs are very attracted to the smell and taste of the anise plant. In fact, in greyhound racing, the fake rabbit they chase is covered with the scent of this plant. When Microsoft was developing the first Xbox console, they tried to buy Nintendo, but the offer was rejected. One Microsoft executive even said that during the negotiation, Nintendo representatives laughed at him for several minutes. The word J was used as slang for a dull or foolish person. So anyone who ignored traffic rules and crossed the street illegally was called a jaywalker. The term became popular in the early 20th century in the United States when campaigns promoted by the automotive industry helped shift responsibility for traffic onto pedestrians. The country of Haiti dissolved its armed forces in 1996 due to the multiple coups that had occurred in previous decades, creating a civilian force instead. Since 2017, Haiti has once again had an army. At the end of the Middle Ages, books were so valuable that they were chained to shelves in libraries so people could not take them away. Since the printing press had not yet been invented, they had to be made by hand. Copying them could take months or even years, since scribes reproduced each page by hand on parchment in monasteries or scriptoria. Adult coloring books designed to relieve stress and anxiety have become fashionable in recent years, with such success that publishers were unable to keep up with demand. The oldest stadium in the world still in operation is Sandygate, home of the semi-professional soccer club Hallam FC in Sheffield, United Kingdom. It was inaugurated in 1804 and has a capacity of 1,665 people. The first inter-club match in the world was played there in 1860. The stadium has also been used for cricket matches. The most densely populated island in the world is Santa Cruz del Islote in Colombia. It measures only 0.004 square miles, but has more than 500 inhabitants. Its population density is even higher than Manhattan Island. The largest stadium in the world is the Ringgrado 1st of May Stadium, located in Pyongyang, North Korea. Completed on May 1, 1989, it is used for sporting events, but is most famous for hosting the annual Mass Games, an artistic and gymnastic event with more than 100,000 participants. In 2013, the United States launched a reconnaissance rocket whose mission logo was an octopus over the planet Earth with the text, "Nothing is beyond our reach." These types of mission patches are usually designed by the military or intelligence units themselves, and sometimes include symbols or internal jokes related to the operation. The Central Library of Harvard University was born because of the Titanic. One of its alumni, Elkins Widener, was among the victims. His mother donated $2 million to build the library as a tribute, which to this day bears his last name and has more than 20 million different books. During the time when Augustus was emperor in ancient Rome, the city reached its highest population with 1 million people, but as the empire began to decline, this number dropped. It was not until 1930 that the city of Rome again reached 1 million residents. Swindon, England, is home to what may be the most confusing-looking intersection ever created. The Magic Roundabout was designed by engineer Frank Blackmore of the British Transport and Road Research Laboratory in 1972 to help relieve traffic congestion. The interchange consists of 5 smaller, separate roundabouts that handle traffic in a clockwise direction, all positioned around a larger central roundabout that operates in a counterclockwise direction. And believe it or not, traffic congestion was significantly reduced. Ken McElroy, a known bully who terrorized residents of Missouri for years, was shot and killed in broad daylight in 1981 in front of dozens of witnesses in the town of Skidmore. Despite the large number of people present, no one claimed to have seen anything or identified the person responsible. The case, linked to Ken McElroy, remains unsolved more than 40 years later and is one of the most notorious examples of vigilante justice in the United States. In Paris, there is a museum of counterfeiting, where they display the best copies or clones of products, banknotes, coins, works of art, or anything that can be copied. The place shows comparisons between original and counterfeit objects to teach how to detect imitations, and also explains the techniques used by counterfeiters. Tacos al pastor, a dish that has become a tradition in Mexico, originated when Middle Eastern immigrants arrived in the city of Puebla 100 years ago and tried to make a version of shawarma. It later adapted to Mexican culture when they added tortillas instead of flatbread, adobo seasoning, and the pineapple placed on top. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld was offered $100 million to film the 10th season of the series Seinfeld, but the offer was declined. To observe Saturn's rings, a telescope with a magnification of 25 is required, but to see them as a structure separate from the planet itself, with visible separation, a magnification of 50 is needed. Among the foods that have more vitamin C per gram than an orange are guavas, black currants, red bell peppers, green kiwi, strawberries, broccoli, parsley, spinach, Brussels sprouts, among others. The reputation oranges have regarding vitamin C comes more from marketing campaigns than from their actual properties. The singer of the band My Chemical Romance, Gerard Way, worked as an intern at the television channel Cartoon Network. During the time he was there, he presented a proposal for a cartoon called The Breakfast Monkey, but it was rejected by the channel's executives. In Belgium, 4 languages are commonly spoken: Dutch, French, German, and English. 38% of Belgians use 2 or 3 languages at work, and 27% can converse in more than 3 languages. Disney banned the use of selfie sticks in its parks due to safety concerns. The devices were already banned on rides, but selfie sticks pose a unique concern, as the extended arms could collide with ride mechanisms or hit another guest. After needing a blood donation when he was young, an Australian man named James Harrison began donating blood as soon as he turned 18. Surprisingly, it was discovered that he has a rare antibody in his blood that cures rhesus disease, and since then he has donated blood more than 1,000 times, saving an estimated 2.4 million babies from the disease. When you cook in a cast iron skillet, the amount of iron in the food being prepared can increase by 850%. There is a monument in Israel called the September 11th Living Memorial Plaza, which was initiated and designed by Eliezer Weishaupt. It was completed in 2009 for $2 million and sits on a hill overlooking the largest cemetery in Jerusalem. It is a 30-foot bronze American flag that forms the shape of a flame to commemorate the flames of the Twin Towers. The base is made from steel cast from the remains of the original World Trade Center. Around the monument are plaques with the names of the victims of September 11th. Fossils of pygmy tyrannosaurs that lived in the Arctic region of the planet were discovered. They measured around 23 feet in length and 6.5 feet in height, half the size of a normal Tyrannosaurus rex. Their size is due to adaptations they developed because of the climate and environment of the region over the years. The city where the movie The Truman Show takes place, which is supposed to be a giant set to film Truman's life, actually exists in real life. It is called Seaside, in Florida. Its construction began in 1981. Its landscapes feature pastel-colored houses that give it a manufactured aesthetic. It really looks like a set. The Netherlands has a defense system that allows much of the country to be turned into an island by flooding all possible land crossings in the event of an invasion. A psychologist named Timothy Leary was sent to prison in 1970 and was given a series of tests to determine which prison he should be placed in. Since he himself designed many of the tests, he manipulated his answers to be placed in a low-security prison as a gardener and ended up escaping only 8 months later. Even though K-pop Demon Hunters became the second most watched film of all time on Netflix and is breaking multiple records, Sony, the studio that produced and developed it, only made a net profit of $20 million from the project after deducting production costs. It is expected to become a billion-dollar franchise, and it will all belong to Netflix. In 1961, the Museum of Modern Art in New York displayed Matisse's painting Le Bateau upside down by mistake. It remained that way for 47 days until someone noticed. And honestly, it looks almost the same right side up or upside down. The first documented attempt at human flight with artificial wings dates back to the 6th century in China, during the reign of Gao Yang. According to historical records, prisoners were forced to use kite-like devices to test whether they could glide. The physicist and theologian Isaac Newton was a member of the British Parliament for 1 year, where he spoke only once, and it was to ask someone to please close a window. He represented the University of Cambridge at the end of the 17th century, and according to historical accounts, his participation in debates was practically non-existent during that period. There is an organic compound called penguin 1 because its 2-dimensional molecular structure looks very similar to the shape of a penguin if you use enough imagination. The actor Charles Chaplin was banned from the United States in 1952 due to the political themes addressed in his films. In 1972, he returned when he was awarded an honorary Oscar and received a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest in the history of the Academy. Many scenes from the movie Jurassic World were filmed at an abandoned Six Flags amusement park in Louisiana, United States. The heaviest human of all time was American John Brower Minnock, who reached a weight of 1,399 pounds. Later, with strict diets, he reduced his weight to 924 pounds, representing the greatest weight loss ever recorded. A good practice for those who buy an action camera like a GoPro is to save a photo of a business card or contact information written on a piece of paper, since these are among the most commonly lost items, and this increases the chances of them being returned. Philosophers in ancient Rome used different beard styles to indicate which philosophical school they belonged to, like urban tribes. The children's book, Where the Wild Things Are, was originally titled Where the Wild Horses Are. However, the author and illustrator Maurice Sendak ended up changing the name after realizing he had no idea how to draw horses. When giraffes are born, they have to survive a fall of more than 5 feet because their mother cannot bend down to give birth. In addition, they have to start walking immediately. Within a few minutes, they try to stand up, and generally, in less than 1 hour, they are already able to follow their mother to avoid predators in the savannah. In 1992, the comedic musician Weird Al Yankovic released Smells Like Nirvana, a parody of Nirvana's hit Smells Like Teen Spirit. Before doing so, he called Kurt Cobain to ask for permission, and Cobain agreed only after he was told it would not be about food wordplay, as his parodies usually were, but about how difficult it is to understand the band's lyrics. In the end, the satirical song was very successful. And, by the way, some extras from the original video appear in the parody video. It is worth watching. In 2010, the rock band Weezer began performing the song Teenage Dirtbag as part of their setlist at all their concerts. That song, by the way, is not theirs. It belongs to a band called Wheatus, but so many people thought it was Weezer's that they did not want to waste that opportunity. Pope Francis broke the record for the fastest Instagram account to reach 1 million followers. It happened in just 12 hours, although the record has since been broken and now belongs to Harry Potter actor Rupert Grint, who in 2020 created his Instagram and reached 1 million followers in just 4 hours. About 36,000 units of blood were donated to the New York Blood Center by people who wanted to help in the days following September 11th. Unfortunately, because blood cannot be used more than a few weeks after donation, many of those units had to be discarded. Mufti Zakaria, a poet, wrote the national anthem of Algeria with his own blood on the walls of his cell after being imprisoned by French imperial forces in 1955. The anthem, titled Kassaman, became a symbol of resistance during the struggle for independence and reflects the strong sense of identity and sacrifice of the Algerian people. It is believed that laughter causes a certain degree of synchronization between the brains of people who are speaking and those who are listening, which makes their emotions more connected. Studies with brain scanners suggest that hearing laughter activates areas related to empathy and social communication. Due to gasoline shortages in Japan after World War II, the first Honda motorcycles ran on alcohol instead of gasoline. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson released a motivational alarm clock. He created the app to help you get out of bed and achieve your personal goals. And the best part is that there is no snooze button. There are 25 ringtones to choose from that were created by The Rock himself. For example, there is one that is just a mix of sounds from his dog, a couple where he simply keeps repeating the words beep and ring ring, and another where he smashes a harp. On average, a bottle of beer produced and purchased in Australia costs 333% more than a bottle of beer produced and purchased in Germany. Hands wrinkle when they are underwater for a long time due to an evolutionary trait. The brain triggers this change in order to provide better grip underwater and increase safety. The Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Indonesia determined that a single manta ray, if captured and killed, is worth between $40 and $500. However, they also determined that if they are kept alive, they are worth up to $1 million in tourism revenue. So they created the largest manta ray sanctuary in the world. The airline British Airways was in negotiations to have its airplanes appear in the James Bond movie Casino Royale, but they did not reach an agreement, and the airplanes that appeared in the movie were those of Virgin Atlantic. In response to this, when the movie was shown during British Airways flights, the version was altered with the Virgin Atlantic logos removed. According to food labeling regulations in the United States, if a product has less than 0.5 grams of an ingredient, it can be rounded down and listed as 0. Because of this, Tic Tac candies state on their label that they contain 0 sugar, even though each unit contains 0.017 ounces. Technically, they are 100% sugar. 50 years ago in Japan, tuna was caught only for fun and as pet food, and it was called nekomatagi, or fish that even a cat rejects. In Albania, the gesture we normally use to say yes means no, and the gesture we use to say no means yes. As part of an experiment, a species of fruit flies was kept in complete darkness for 60 years, which is equivalent to 1,500 generations. When studied today, although they showed no apparent changes, their DNA had significant changes in 84 genes, showing that the environment influences genetics in a relatively short time. Octopuses are so intelligent and have such complex nervous systems that science considers them capable of feeling pain and emotions, which is why in some countries it is illegal to operate on them without using anesthesia. The island in the television show Gilligan's Island was created in Hollywood in the middle of an artificial lake on the CBS studio lot. The set cost $75,000 to build and had artificial palm trees mixed with real plants and flowers. During World War II, Adolf Hitler considered extreme plans as part of his strategy against the Soviet Union. Among them, there were ideas to destroy key cities such as Moscow, and even transform the area through large projects, such as the creation of an artificial lake. In 1925, a man named Arthur Alves convinced a mint in England to make 200,000 banknotes of the currency of Portugal at that time, escudos. To this day, it is considered one of the largest frauds ever carried out, since the amount of money was equivalent to almost 1% of the gross domestic product of Portugal. There are more than 1,300 Brazilian soccer players playing outside their country in leagues around the world. In second place is France, with almost 1,100. And in third place, Argentina, with nearly 1,000. When actress Zendaya Coleman auditioned to play the character MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming, she actually had no idea what movie it was for. They did not tell her at any point until she was selected. Even though her initials are MJ, her name in the movie is Michelle Jones, and she has no relation to Mary Jane, the traditional Spider-Man character. Nuclear missile tests conducted during the Cold War helped determine the true age of whale sharks by studying radioactive residues found in some specimens. It was discovered that they can live more than 100 years. The National Institutes of Health in the United States spent $1.5 million developing a mobile device video game where you are a mother who has to persuade her child to eat more vegetables. It did not achieve the expected success. Practically nobody played it. Watson, IBM's artificial intelligence computer, learned to use profanity from Urban Dictionary. Because of that, it started speaking in a cheeky way, so scientists had to remove the entire Urban Dictionary database from its memory. In 2002, O.J. Simpson was charged and fined $65 for creating a wake in a manatee zone with his boat in a Florida bay. The oldest movie with a recorded copyright that has survived to this day is Fred Ott's Sneeze from 1894, produced by Thomas Edison's company, in which one of his assistants sneezes. It only lasts 5 seconds. When the largest diamond in the world was transported from Africa to England in 1906, the steamship journey attracted attention, but was only a decoy. The real diamond was sent by mail in a cardboard box. Scorpions can survive being frozen and thawed, as well as extreme heat of up to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and some species can even survive underwater for 2 full days. Their metabolism is very slow, which allows them to endure long periods without food and adapt to extreme conditions. In addition, they have a tough cuticle that helps retain moisture and protect their organs in harsh environments. In 2003, neurosurgeon and CNN medical correspondent Sanjay Gupta saved the life of Marine Jesus Vidania after he was shot in the head in Iraq. He did it by performing brain surgery using a Black & Decker drill bit. On the site where the Louvre Museum in Paris now stands, there was previously a medieval castle that was demolished in stages and replaced by the palace. To this day, remains of the base and the walls that surrounded it can be seen in different places in Paris, including one that is in a parking lot. The cotton-top tamarin is a monkey native to northwestern Colombia that lives its entire life in trees. They do not even come down to drink water. They obtain it from fruit or directly from environmental moisture. They are endangered due to deforestation. The first Looney Tunes animated shorts from the early 1930s were made specifically to promote Warner Brothers' music catalog, but since they were very successful, they continued producing them. After years of believing that humans only have 5 senses, scientists now accept that we have many more, including rare ones such as sensing magnetic fields and sensing the passage of time. The mother of Buzz Aldrin, one of the first men to reach the moon in the Apollo mission, had the last name Moon. The name of the character Buzz Lightyear is inspired by the name of this astronaut. Aldrin walked on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission in 1969 alongside Neil Armstrong. The government of the city of Paris established that actor Tom Cruise is prohibited from becoming an honorary citizen of France. This is due to his ties to Scientology. Romanian tennis player Simona Halep used to have 34 double D breasts until she underwent breast reduction surgery to be more agile while playing. It worked, because since then, she has moved up in the world of tennis rankings. Actor Keanu Reeves voiced a cat in the movie Keanu, in which comedians Key and Peele must rescue their pet, a cat named Keanu. At first, Reeves had turned down the role, but after watching the trailer on his sister's recommendation, he agreed to do the brief cameo, in which he speaks during a dream scene. The painter Vincent van Gogh used to paint over his own paintings when he could not afford materials for a new one, and this was discovered recently when his works were analyzed using X-ray technology. Microwave popcorn bags do not contain any special material. You can make your own microwave popcorn by putting corn kernels in a brown paper bag. In the 1996 movie Twister, the sound of a camel's groan was slowed down and used as the sound for the tornado. Sound designers mixed that audio with other effects to create a more unsettling and realistic feeling, since the natural sounds of a tornado do not always come across as impactful on screen. The main Star Wars theme, composed by John Williams, is heavily inspired by the music from a lesser-known movie from 1942 called King's Row. There are even moments where the notes and arrangements are the same. DC Comics published an alternate universe where Bruce Wayne dies instead of his parents. In it, Thomas Wayne becomes Batman, and Martha Wayne goes insane and becomes the Joker. This story is part of the arc known as Flashpoint, where an altered timeline drastically changes the fate of many characters. The comic or manga market in Japan reached record revenue of more than 700 billion yen in 2024. Of that amount, digital sales now dominate printed editions, accounting for approximately 70%. The next countries where manga sells the most after Japan are France and the United States. The Pentagon developed a nano-flying vehicle in 2011, a spy drone shaped like a hummingbird. $4 million were invested in its development. It was recognized by Time magazine as one of the 50 best inventions of that year. In the Avatar movies, the Na'vi have 4 fingers and are left-handed, while the Avatars have 5 fingers and are right-handed. This was decided during the production of the first movie because the actress Zoe Saldana is left-handed, so she would not look out of place using a bow and arrow compared to the other characters. The director James Cameron is also left-handed. Wheaties cereal is fortified with iron, and the amount can be so high that it has been observed to be attracted by a magnet. This can also happen with any food that has a high concentration of this mineral. It literally contains tiny pieces of iron. When the animated movie Thumbelina from 1994 was first shown to a test audience by the studio Warner Brothers, it was not well received. They later ran another test showing the same movie but with the Disney logo at the beginning, and this time, it was successful. In the French city of Valenciennes, a couple named their baby Nutella. A judge ruled that it was not in the best interest of the child to carry that name since it was the name of a spread, and when the parents did not appear in court, the girl was renamed Ella. Black tomatoes can be grown without any genetic engineering. They are full of beneficial anthocyanins, which are believed to help with obesity, cancer, and diabetes. These dark varieties are obtained through traditional crossbreeding, and their intense color is also related to a higher concentration of natural antioxidants. In ancient cultures such as the Celts, it was believed that benevolent and gentle spirits lived in trees. For that reason, it became customary to touch trees when you needed protection or good luck. That is where the saying and the custom of knocking on wood when you do not want something bad to happen comes from. The 4 major airlines in the United States often lose money flying passengers, but they stay afloat thanks to loyalty programs and credit card agreements. These deals, which sell miles to banks and partners, generate enormous revenue and sustain the industry. Otherwise, airline tickets would be much more expensive. To perfectly match the style of episodes that evoked classic comedy series, the actors of the series WandaVision took a special study course where they spent 2 weeks watching and analyzing series from different decades. Pepsi ran a campaign in which people were asked to taste Coca-Cola and Pepsi in cups without knowing which was which, showing that more people chose Pepsi. But according to research, people tend to choose the sweeter option at first. However, If they drink an entire can, they preferred the less sweet option. During World War II, a 14-year-old boy named Jacqueline Lucas lied to join the army and became the youngest Marine to receive a Medal of Honor. When he was 17 years old, he threw himself onto 2 live grenades to protect members of his squad and survived. A 70-year-old person has lost, on average, 103 pounds of skin cells throughout their life. These skin particles naturally shed from the body day by day, which helps protect the skin from diseases. A large part of the dust that accumulates in homes and rooms is partly made up of these tiny shed cells. McDonald's sells more than 1 billion Happy Meals with toys each year. For that reason, it is often described as one of the largest toy distributors in the world. Because of the environmental impact this entails, the company has announced different measures to reduce new plastic use by 90% compared to 2018. Lara Croft, the protagonist of the Tomb Raider games and movies, was originally going to be named Laura Cruz and was going to be from Latin America. But they changed her name to Lara when they realized that Americans could not pronounce Laura properly. They also changed her last name to Croft when they decided she would be from Great Britain instead. The most common banknote in the world is the $100 bill. It is estimated that there are more than 8,200,000,000 of these bills in circulation worldwide. Until 2015, the most common one was the $1 bill. The largest indoor beach in the world is called Tropical Islands Resort in Krausnick, Germany. Built inside a former aircraft hangar, it contains a forest of 50,000 plants that extends over an area of 107,639 square feet, a spa, a waterfall, a hot tub, and a water slide. In fact, it is large enough to fly a hot air balloon inside. Aside from archival images of historical figures, Stephen Hawking is the only person to date who has played himself in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He appeared in a scene alongside holographic versions of other famous scientists, making his participation a very memorable moment within the franchise. In Italy, there is a wine fountain. It is located on a route followed by travelers near Rome and operates 24 hours a day, and anyone can arrive and drink wine for free. However, there is a rule that prohibits entry to people who drink too much and disturb the order. Crows can remember human faces they consider dangerous for years, since they share that information with other crows in their group. Experiments with masks demonstrated their social learning. When a crow labels someone as bad, the reputation can be passed down even across generations. In ancient Greece, spider webs were used as bandages to treat wounds because they have antiseptic and antifungal properties. Every year, approximately 1,100,000 euros are collected from coins thrown into the Trevi Fountain in Rome. People usually make a wish each time they throw a coin. The money is used for its maintenance. Newspapers are traditionally very large because of a tax that was established in Great Britain in 1712, where the amount they had to pay the government increased the more pages the publication had. So they increased the size of the pages so there would be fewer of them. And shortly afterward, newspapers in other countries copied this format. The DeLorean in the movie Back to the Future had to have a speedometer specially made for the film, because in 1979, a law was passed in the United States that prohibited car speedometers from going above 85 miles per hour. And as we know, the car had to reach 88 to travel through time. Violinist Niccolò Paganini, who is considered by many to be the greatest of all time, was once forced to present letters sent by his parents to confirm that he was not a paranormal being, or to prove that he had not sold his soul to the devil to obtain his talent. On average, half of service dogs fail training. Because of this, in South Korea, they attempted to clone dogs that passed to see if they could improve the rate, and it was shown that they could. Cloned dogs had a higher chance of passing. According to a study conducted by St. Michael's Hospital, nearly half of the homeless men who participated in the study have suffered at least one traumatic brain injury in their lifetime. 87% of those injuries occurred before they lost their homes. There is a city in Kansas called Gas that was named after the large amount of gas discovered in the area. The city's slogan is, "Do not pass gas, stop and enjoy it." The name came after the discovery of natural gas in the early 20th century, which boosted local growth and gave the city a very peculiar identity. A Steinway piano belonging to the Polish pianist Christian Zimmermann was destroyed by authorities in the United States when he went there for a tour, because the glue had a strange smell and they thought it might contain a bomb. He had problems again a few years later on another tour he did. Since then, he no longer performs concerts in that country. The casing of the PlayStation 5 console and the cover of the DualSense controller have a micro-texture made up of thousands of tiny icons of the classic PlayStation buttons: X, circle, triangle, square. This is an interesting Easter egg. In addition, it gives it a premium feel. Leonardo da Vinci wrote all his notes backward so they could only be read in the reflection of a mirror. However, when he wrote letters to other people, he wrote normally. He was also dyslexic. There is a garden near Google's headquarters where statues represent each different version of the Android operating system and correspond to the thematic name of each version. In 2007, Harry Potter star Daniel Radcliffe wore the same clothes while leaving a theater in London for 6 months straight, so that paparazzi would end up with the same photos every day and therefore could not publish the images. Contrary to popular belief, white spots on fingernails are not a sign of excess or deficiency of calcium or zinc or other vitamins in the diet. They are actually called leukonychia, are completely harmless, and are most commonly caused by minor injuries that occur while the nail is growing. There is a library in the airport of Estonia where you can take any book you want to read during your trip. You only have to write on the bookmark which country you took it to. It also works on an honesty system. They do not charge anything, and you are not required to return the books. At the highest point of the Cathedral of Milan, there is a statue called the Golden Virgin of the Duomo, which imposes the rule that it must remain the highest point in the city. This tradition dates back to when the cathedral's 328 feet were the tallest point. Since then, 3 taller buildings have had to construct their own replica so that the Virgin remains the summit of the city. In the introduction of each episode of the series Futurama, they added a humorous slogan. One of them says, "What happens in Cygnus X1 stays in Cygnus X1." It does not refer to some kind of Las Vegas of space. In reality, Cygnus X1 is the largest black hole that is relatively close to Earth, at 6,000 light-years away. In the movie Your Name, there is an orange GameCube console in the game room. This color was exclusive to Japan. In the Americas, the launch color was purple. Comedian Nathan Fielder, star of the Comedy Central show Nathan for You, opened a parody coffee shop called Dumb Starbucks as a television stunt. Camels have 3 types of eyelids to protect their eyes from sandstorms. They also have 2 layers of eyelashes, and the longest can measure up to 3.94 inches. In 1969, Seiko launched the Astron, the world's first quartz watch, which was so precise compared to mechanical watches that instead of losing seconds each day, it lost only 5 seconds per month. It cost the same as a compact car, but it marked a complete shift in the watch industry, as Seiko opened its patents so other manufacturers could make their own quartz movements. Gelatophobia is a pathological fear of laughter or ridicule. It occurs mainly in people who have suffered bullying, who develop an uncontrollable fear of other people's laughter, interpreting it as a personal attack. It is believed that up to 13% of people suffer from this. Reciprocal liking is a psychological term used to describe when you begin to like someone after discovering that they like you. It is a phenomenon that reflects how people feel better about themselves and enjoy the company of those who give them positive feelings. On January 15, 1919, a storage tank burst on the coast of Boston, releasing nearly 2 million gallons of molasses in a wave 15 feet high and 160 feet wide. It rushed through the north end of the city at 35 miles per hour, killing 21 people and injuring many others. It was so powerful that it even swept a train off its tracks and knocked down electrical poles. The company Pantone created a special purple color in honor of the musician Prince called Love Symbol No. 2, based on the color of the piano he made with Yamaha in 2016. The largest city with no road access is Iquitos in Peru. It is located in the Amazon rainforest and can only be reached by airplane or boat. It has 480,000 inhabitants. In one of the oldest known books on tactics to win at chess from 1561, among the advice given was to play with your back to the sun so your opponent would be dazzled, and if playing at night, they advised casting your shadow over the board so your opponent could not see the moves. Extremely good advice. The country with the highest average internet speed is Singapore, followed by South Korea, Monaco, and Romania, while in Latin America, the fastest internet is found in Chile. The United States Department of Agriculture reported that the average American consumes between 150 and 170 pounds of refined sugar each year. A man named Sogen Kato was believed to be the oldest man in Tokyo until 2010, when officials went to his home to wish him a happy 111th birthday, only to find his mummified remains. It turned out he had been dead for 30 years while his family continued collecting his pension money. That is just not right. There are many roads in the world where a phenomenon occurs in which cars in neutral appear to move uphill on a road that actually slopes downward. It is known as a magnetic hill or gravity hill, but in reality it is only an optical illusion where reference points confuse people's perspective. In the Aztec Empire, cacao had different roles. It was used as tribute, as a medium of payment, and as food. The drink chocolate, made from cacao, also had ritual and aristocratic status. In its ceremonial version, it was flavored with vanilla or chili. In the series Breaking Bad, Jesse Pinkman's friend Skinny Pete, despite being the stereotype of a hopeless slacker, has a scene where he shows better than average vocabulary, and there is even a moment where he plays the piano perfectly. This was never addressed again in later episodes, but it added a lot of depth to his character. The winner of the gold medal in the marathon at the first modern Olympic Games in 1896 stopped in the middle of the race to have a glass of wine at a restaurant he liked. Today, doing something like that would result in immediate disqualification. In the 1990s, the Sultan of Brunei and his brother accumulated a collection of thousands of cars, most of them luxury vehicles. Years later, some were returned to the state, but according to recently released photos, the remaining thousands of cars were left abandoned without maintenance, gathering dust, and there are no plans to sell them or put them on display. The house that was used in the series Malcolm in the Middle was a private residence that they rented for $3,000 a day when they were filming. In 2011, it was rebuilt, so it no longer looks the same. However, the house next door remains, so fans of the series often visit it. In Finland, when you earn your doctorate, you are given a doctoral hat that looks like a top hat, as well as a doctoral sword like a true knight. This academic ritual symbolizes scientific freedom and the defense of knowledge. The hat represents intellectual authority, while the sword reflects the responsibility to protect truth and ethics in research. In ancient Rome, women believed that if you wore a leather pouch containing a cat's liver on your left foot during intercourse, it would prevent pregnancy. In an area of the Namib Desert, grass circles known as fairy circles form, which were long considered a mystery. But it was recently discovered that they form due to the distribution of water when it rains, which concentrates in circular patterns and is then used by nearby plants. The Swedish warship Vasa is the only 17th century ship that has survived intact to the present day. It sank in 1628, but was recovered and restored in 1961. It is on display in a museum in the city of Stockholm. Artist Mark Quinn creates self-portraits using his own blood as the medium. He molds his own head in plaster mixed with 10 pints of his own blood and then immerses it in frozen silicone. He has been doing this every year since 1991 as a way to preserve the natural aging process, as well as a symbol of his dependence on alcohol. In April of 2014, the Danish government built an exact replica of their country in the online game Minecraft, using 4 billion Minecraft building blocks. It was intended for educational purposes, but within weeks, American players had invaded the game, planting United States flags everywhere and blowing things up. United States. One of the pyramids of Egypt was vandalized 2,000 years ago by a Roman tourist who wrote, "I did not like anything except the sarcophagus, and I cannot read the hieroglyphs." This type of graffiti was relatively common in antiquity, and many Greek and Roman visitors left inscriptions on Egyptian monuments during their travels. 1 and 2 cent euro coins are the most produced. There are tens of billions in circulation, but this could change since there is debate about whether they should stop being produced because their value may even be lower than the material and production cost. Some people say that singer Alanis Morissette looks very similar to Russian composer Sergei Prokofiev, who is one of the most recognized musicians of the 20th century. They even invented a theory that says she is his reincarnation. A bookstore in Australia sells its books wrapped in paper with short descriptions written on them. They do this so no one judges a book by its cover. In 1998, Kevin Warwick, a professor of cybernetics at the University of Reading, became the world's first technical cyborg. He implanted a radio frequency identification device in his arm and was able to turn on lights by snapping his fingers. The board game Senet is one of the oldest known games. It was invented in Egypt and is more than 5,000 years old. Platypuses use electroreception to hunt their food. They can perceive the weak electrical impulses generated by the muscles of animals as they move. In 1975, Professor Jack H. Hetherington of Michigan State University added his cat as a co-author of a theoretical paper he had been working on. He did this because he accidentally used words like we and our in the paper and did not feel like revising it. Yes, that is a bit lazy and crazy. The movie Shrek was originally a children's storybook. It was written in 1990, and the story is similar: an ogre who ends up marrying a princess. However, it also has some quite different elements, such as Donkey barely appearing, and in addition, Shrek could breathe fire from his mouth and had laser vision, something that would not have been bad to include in the movie. The Chinese film Ne Zha 2 from 2025 became the highest-grossing film in the history of China, as well as the highest-grossing animated film overall, with $2,200,000,000 in revenue. An English-dubbed version and other language versions will be released soon. In 2020, Jim Carrey published a novel about his life, but with a somewhat fictional twist, as it tells how he fights aliens with the help of Gwyneth Paltrow. So far, it has been well received by critics. Beethoven composed many of his most popular pieces with the intention that they be played faster, including the Fifth Symphony, unlike how they are commonly performed today. But since many professional orchestras had trouble playing them, they slowed the tempo instead. The 1928 Mickey Mouse version Steamboat Willie is set to enter the public domain in 2024. This means that anyone will be able to adapt this character without having to pay Disney, as long as certain required conditions are met. Melba Toast and Peach Melba are named after the most famous opera singer of the late Victorian era, Dame Nellie Melba. In 2010, a man named Gary Richmond was beaten into a coma and woke up with amnesia, forgetting his girlfriend of 26 years and his daughter. However, after just 3 years of waking up, he fell in love with his girlfriend again, and they actually got married in January of that year. How charming. If astronauts fall asleep in a non-specialized bed for many hours in zero gravity, they run the risk of waking up with their head surrounded by a bubble of their own carbon dioxide, which will prevent them from breathing and can make them feel like they are suffocating. The economy of the game Old School RuneScape is so complex that the developer had to raise the tax in the Grand Exchange, where players gather to buy and sell, to 2% in order to drain gold and remove high-supply items from circulation, thereby reducing inflation within the game. When players found out about this, some of them organized protests. In the movie Home Alone, Harry the Thief tries to bite Kevin's finger in one scene. In reality, actor Joe Pesci actually bit Macaulay Culkin and left him with a scar that he still has today, and possibly psychological trauma as well. It is illegal to sell Jack Daniel's whiskey in the place where the factory is located, Moore County, because it is a dry county. You have to travel a few miles to be able to buy it. Queen termites have a very long lifespan and are the oldest termites in the colony. They can live up to 50 years and produce eggs for up to 10 years. During that time, they can lay thousands of eggs per day in their most active stages, allowing the colony to grow rapidly. Their bodies expand over time to accommodate this reproductive capacity, and they remain protected in special chambers within the nest, constantly attended by other termites. One of the rules that people who work portraying Ronald McDonald must follow specifically says that they cannot tell children that hamburger meat comes from cows, even if they ask very insistently. In the state of Yucatan in Mexico, there is a small town called Xbox. This name comes from the Mayan language and means the black woman, which comes from a local legend that says a woman dressed in black appears in the town's well. In the movie Escape from New York, there is a scene that shows what appears to be a computer model of the city. However, no digital effects were used for that shot. They took the city model used for other scenes and placed green adhesive tape on it that glowed under UV light, achieving an effect that looks quite good on a low budget. Until the 1930s, the letter E was used to represent a failing grade in the United States. However, it was changed to F as teachers began to worry that students would confuse E with excellent. In 1972, a few years after being elected to Congress, Shirley Chisholm became the first African-American woman to run for president. She never expected to win, but she ran to show that Americans could vote for an African-American woman. The South Korean company Samsung was founded in 1938 and initially produced various grocery items, even making its own noodles, before moving into electronics in 1970. In 2004, a new species of monkey was discovered in Bolivia and was named the Golden Palace monkey. This happened because an auction was held to decide the name, and the online casino Golden Palace paid $650,000, which were used to support Madidi National Park, where this species lives. The largest species of earthworm in the world can be found in Gippsland in southeastern Australia. The Gippsland giant can grow up to 10 feet long. It lives underground in moist soil and can produce audible sounds as it moves, something unusual for earthworms. Due to its slow growth and limited habitat, it is a protected species and is rarely seen on the surface. There is a 16-story office building in Osaka, Japan, called the Gate Tower Building, which has an entire highway passing through the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors of the structure. That is interesting architecture. The road does not directly touch the building, as it is supported by its own structure and includes insulation to reduce noise and vibrations inside the offices. In ancient Egypt, couples were considered married when they moved in together. Wedding ceremonies were reserved for the upper class. For most of the population, it was enough to establish a shared household and share property. And in many cases, written agreements were signed to define inheritances and family responsibilities. Scientists managed to bring back to life a plant that is 32,000 years old. It was regenerated from fruit tissue found in Siberian permafrost, the permanently frozen layer of ground. The researchers were able to cultivate 36 plants that grew and produced seeds. A galactic year, which is the time it takes the Milky Way to complete one full rotation, lasts approximately the equivalent of 200 million Earth years. The invention of the fire hydrant is generally attributed to Frederick Graf, although no one knows with 100% certainty who actually patented it. This is because, ironically, the patent for the first fire hydrant was destroyed when the office in Washington, D.C. burned down in 1836. NFL games usually last around 3 hours if you include the time for commercials and all the pauses they have. But if you add up the total time during which there is action and the ball is moving, it averages only 11 minutes. Many buildings in Hong Kong have holes in the middle. They are called dragon gates. They're designed to allow dragons to pass from the mountains to the sea. In 1930, the Indiana Bell Building was rotated 90 degrees over the course of 1 month at a speed of 11.8 inches per hour, all while the 600 people who worked there continued their normal activities. At no point were electricity, water, or sewage services interrupted. Human gas is, in a way, similar to fingerprints since its bacterial composition is unique to each person. For this reason, it does not bother you to smell your own gas as much as that of others. Evel Knievel, the pioneer of long-distance motorcycle jumps, suffered 433 bone fractures and holds the world record for the most bones broken in a lifetime. Throughout his career, he performed more than 75 documented jumps, many of them with failed landings that contributed to those injuries. Despite this, his fame grew thanks to his televised performances, which made him an icon of risk and motorcycle entertainment. The Centennial Light, located at the Livermore Fire Station, has remained lit almost continuously since 1901, making it the longest-lasting light bulb in the world, according to Guinness World Records. With more than 120 years of operation, it has only been turned off on a few occasions, usually due to relocations or power outages, and has become a symbol of durability and efficiency. Plants on one side and the other side of the Great Wall of China have been studied, and it was concluded that they began to develop different genetic variations starting from the time when it was built, to the point that they could begin evolving into different species. Hitler's nephew William fought on the side of the United States Army against his uncle during the Second World War. A baby hippopotamus from Kenya named Owen was separated from his mother by the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2004. He later met a 130-year-old tortoise and thought it was another hippopotamus. From that moment on, they became friends. In the late 1960s, a group of imposters claimed to be the British rock band The Zombies and performed many concerts across the United States, and people went to see them. 2 of those imposters would later form the famous group ZZ Top. Once, the United States Postal Service sent a letter to the band The Postal Service asking them to change their name, but after negotiations, they were allowed to keep it in exchange for performing at the annual Mail Carriers Conference. According to research, people whose initials form an insult or who have an unusual name that can lead to ridicule tend to have a shorter life expectancy. This may be due to the psychological stress caused by bullying from childhood. In a new study published in an entomology journal, a research team from the University of Florida and Union College discovered that bedbugs love the colors black and red and hate yellow and green. In 2014, a competitive eater named Molly Schuyler, who weighs only 126 pounds, won 4 eating contests in just 3 days. She ate a total of 363 chicken wings, 59 pancakes, 5 pounds of bacon, and 5 pounds of barbecue meat. Delicious. In the country of Sri Lanka, stilt fishing became popular after World War II, since the lack of food meant that there were too many fishermen creating vibrations in the water and scaring the fish away. Because of this, fishermen began climbing onto bamboo structures that supported them. In North Carolina, United States, there is an edible park that has more than 40 varieties of fruits and nuts that people can pick from trees and bushes to eat. 97% of the women traveling in first class on the Titanic survived thanks to the lifeboats. The main ingredients of Play-Doh modeling dough are flour, water, and oil, so it can be eaten. When it was created in the decade of 1930, it was going to be used as a wallpaper cleaner, but the manufacturers realized that children liked it, so it was redesigned as a toy. The first female mayor in the United States was elected in 1887. Some men nominated her as a joke, but she won with 60% of the vote, and the ones who tried to troll her were the ones who got trolled. The Mediterranean myth of the Cyclops has been theorized to have originated because pygmy elephant skeletons were found, whose skull is only about twice the size of a human one, and whose central nasal cavity can easily be mistaken for the cavity of a single giant eye. It is possible to be allergic to the cold. This allergy, called cold urticaria, is an allergic response to cold temperatures that triggers hives, swelling, and itching, and if the allergy is severe enough, it can cause fainting, shock, or even death, and it has no cure. Some production staff on the series American Horror Story requested time off to leave the set because the clown character, Twisty, was too terrifying. Others reported having nightmares because of it. In Great Britain, there is a law that allows public access for walking in mountains in different natural formations for recreation, even if they are private lands. Alligator snapping turtles, or snapping turtles, evolved to have a strong bite as a defense against predators because they are too large to hide inside their shells like common turtles. For that reason, they also have more open shells and very powerful jaws that can close very quickly when they feel threatened. Cellophane is not actually made of plastic. It is completely made of cellulose, which means it can degrade in as little as 90 days if left in the soil. Maple syrup contains more calcium than milk and more potassium than bananas. It is also a good source of minerals such as magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, and iron. In Canada, they make a maple syrup candy by pouring it onto snow and rolling it onto a popsicle stick. Researchers exploring the northwestern Hawaiian Islands aboard the Okeanos Explorer came across the largest sea sponge in the world. It was found at 22,966 feet below the surface of the ocean and measured 12 feet long and 7 feet wide. The inventor of petroleum jelly, who lived to be 96 years old, claimed that eating a spoonful of his invention daily had helped him maintain good health. Dr. Donald Unger cracked the fingers of his left hand daily for more than 60 years, while leaving the fingers of his right hand untouched. To the surprise of many, he did not develop arthritis or any other condition in either hand. He won the Nobel Prize in 2009 for this, and also gave everyone permission to crack their knuckles. It is believed that Phobos, the largest moon of Mars, will crash into the red planet, or possibly disintegrate and become a ring within 50 million years. In 1992, a group of young people who wanted to do community service entered the Bruniquel cave in France to erase graffiti and accidentally erased invaluable cave paintings from 15,000 years ago that represented bison, and which it was recently discovered may have been painted by Neanderthals. In the early 1930s, a social movement called the technocracy movement became popular, although it eventually disappeared, which proposed replacing politics, politicians, and business leaders with scientists and engineers who could manage the economy. Its followers advocated measuring production and consumption based on energy and efficiency, seeking a more rational system, although its ideas were never implemented on a large scale. There is a solar facility at Walt Disney World in Lake Buena Vista, Florida, that consists of 48,000 solar panels and is shaped like Mickey Mouse. During the Napoleonic Wars at the beginning of the 19th century, the capital of Portugal was moved for 15 years to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. In Singapore, the import or sale of chewing gum is illegal unless you have a medical reason to need it. This rule was introduced in the 1990s to prevent issues such as sticky residue in public transportation and urban spaces. Today, only certain types of therapeutic gum can be sold under regulation, such as those used to quit smoking, keeping the city notably clean. The most visited city in the world in 2023 was Istanbul, Turkey, with a little more than 20 million international visitors. It is considered a bridge city between different cultures and continents due to its geographical location. Abraham Lincoln was considered ugly, and he himself thought so as well. Once, when he was accused of being dishonest or two-faced, his response was, "If I had two faces, do you think I would be wearing this one?" There is a flower with white petals that turn transparent when they get wet. Some call it the skeleton flower. I would call it the glass flower. The stethoscope was invented in France in 1816 by René Laennec, motivated by the discomfort he felt putting his ear on women's chests to listen to their heartbeats. Once, rapper Lil Wayne was removed from a basketball charity game because he tried to fight with a referee. There is a species of fungus called the bleeding tooth. It is also called strawberries and cream, and although it is not toxic, it is not edible. But seriously, who would want to try this thing anyway? This fungus secretes a red liquid that looks like blood, which contains compounds with antibacterial properties. It usually grows in coniferous forests, and its unusual appearance has made it one of the most photographed fungi. In the trash compactor scene in Star Wars, Mark Hamill, playing Luke Skywalker, wanted the serial number needed to escape to be his own phone number, but that line had to be spoken by Han Solo, so he forced Harrison Ford to say his number so that it would remain in the movie. Most of Steve Jobs' fortune came from his shares in the Walt Disney Company, not from Apple. This was because he sold the studio Pixar to Disney in 1996, receiving shares in exchange and becoming one of its largest individual shareholders. Margarita Pizza is named after Queen Margarita, who in 1889 visited the Brandy Pizzeria in Naples. The chef made her a special pizza that contained the three colors of the Italian flag. The Moomin House Cafe in Bunkyo, Tokyo offers coffee, treats, and the company of a large stuffed animal. In fact, you will be seated with a plush companion so that you do not have to dine alone. The life expectancy of people with Down syndrome was 12 years in 1912. It has increased so much that it is now more than 60 years. The characteristic sound of hyenas, identified by many as laughter, is so loud that it can be heard up to 8.07 miles away. Donald Trump became the oldest president in the history of the United States when he took office again in 2025 at 78 years old, surpassing the record that had been set by Joe Biden when he began his term in 2021 at the same age, although Trump surpassed it by a few months. This is Sir Niels Olav. He is a penguin who has been an honorary member and mascot of the Norwegian Kingsguard since 1972. He was officially knighted in 2008, but the penguin that was knighted in the ceremony was not the original Niels Olav, since that penguin died in the 1980s and was instead replaced by a 2-year-old penguin from the zoo. Yes, that is weird. Indicator birds have a behavior that has not been observed in any other animal. They often guide humans and other large mammals to beehives. Once the mammal takes the honey, this bird feeds on the remaining wax and the larva. In some regions of Africa, they even respond to special calls used by honey gatherers to start this cooperation. Your hair contains tiny traces of gold. This metal can be found in microscopic amounts within the human body due to environmental exposure and the minerals present in water and food. However, the concentration is so low that it has no practical or commercial value, and it is part of the many trace elements that naturally circulate in the body. A man named Charles Osborne had a hiccup attack that lasted 68 years, from 1922 to 1990, when one day it simply stopped for unknown reasons. Dolphins cannot chew their food. Their teeth are only used to grab food, and they will shake it and rub it against the ocean floor to break it into smaller, more manageable pieces. Afterward, they usually swallow the pieces whole, since their digestive system is adapted to process them without chewing. In addition, many species cooperate when hunting, surrounding schools of fish to make them easier to catch. Nuclear divers are professionals whose job consists of submerging themselves in the cooling systems of nuclear reactors at power plants to perform maintenance work. It is one of the best paid jobs per hour, but it is also one of the most dangerous. The first film role Edward Norton had was nominated for the Academy Awards. He has never taken acting classes. The Paris Olympic Games of 2024 will be the first in which gold, silver, and bronze medals will be awarded in breakdancing, which recently became an Olympic sport. The tallest tree in the world is currently Hyperion, a 379-foot tall redwood in Redwood National Park in California. Its exact location is kept secret to protect it from excessive tourism and possible damage. It is estimated to be several centuries old, and its growth continues slowly thanks to the humid climate and frequent coastal fog that provides additional moisture even during dry periods. In 2013, Google sent a single employee to an abandoned Japanese island called Gunkanjima to map it for Google Street View. The island was once the most densely populated place in the world, but now it is completely abandoned. And if it seems familiar, it is because it was the island used in the movie Skyfall. The Andean condor, when it flies, flaps its wings only 1% of the time. The other 99%, it simply glides, using the air to its advantage to stay aloft. It is one of the heaviest flying birds on the entire planet. Cassie de Picole visited all 196 countries in the world in just 18 and a half months. Her feat broke 2 world records. Porcupines have natural antibiotics in their skin and are among the few mammals to have this protection, in case their quills were not enough. This is the famous Swedish ice hotel that is built every winter. After it melts in the spring, authorities in 2013 established a requirement to install fire alarms, even though the entire place is made of ice, just in case things like sleeping bags or pillows catch fire. Martial arts fighters usually keep serious expressions because it has been shown that smiling before a match increases the chances of defeat, since a smile is associated with feelings such as fear and submission. Researchers from the University of Texas ran out of funding while studying the pirate Morgan and trying to recover items from his sunken ships near the coasts of Panama. When the rum company Captain Morgan found out about this, it provided funding so they could continue. The oldest mummies in the world are not Egyptian. They belong to the Chinchorro culture in the Atacama Desert in Chile and are more than 7,000 years old. A flamin' hot Cheeto shaped like the famous gorilla Harambe sold for $99,000 on eBay. Researchers from the University of Oxford and the University of Queensland discovered that the small tropical archerfish can be trained to accurately recognize human faces. When researchers showed 2 faces side by side on a screen above a fish tank, one familiar and one unfamiliar, the fish was able to recognize the same face 81% of the time in color and even more accurately in black and white images. In 2014, Budapest broke the world record for the tallest Lego tower ever built, made of 450,000 colorful bricks and topped with a large Hungarian Rubik's Cube. The structure measured 114 feet tall in front of St. Stephen's Basilica. Each year, the government of China offers 60 students scholarships to study at universities in North Korea. During their studies, Chinese students have more freedom in the country than other visitors. They can travel from city to city without a guide, and they can take the subway whenever they want. In 1987, the company Fisher-Price sold a video camera capable of recording directly onto traditional cassette tapes. No one knows if Marco Polo actually visited China during his travels, despite being a key figure in trade relations with Europe. According to many records, there are no mentions of him in Chinese literature, and he never mentioned things such as the Great Wall or Chinese characters. The pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, Madison Bumgarner, once dated a woman named Madison Bumgarner. Most scenes in the series The Mandalorian were filmed using a giant LED screen that can project interior backgrounds, landscapes, and anything needed in real time. This significantly reduced the use of traditional green screens. What actually makes water a good conductor of electrical energy are the impurities it contains, such as minerals. By itself, water would not be able to conduct electricity. Chef Anthony Bourdain sometimes did not mention the names of the restaurants or places he visited while filming. He did this to prevent them from becoming tourist attractions and being ruined. Japan officially recognizes Bitcoin as a form of payment, but not as currency. James Earl Jones, who has provided the voice for characters such as Darth Vader and Mufasa in The Lion King, had a stuttering problem during his childhood that even led him to stop speaking for several years. But thanks to the support of one of his teachers, who had him read aloud every day, he discovered that he had a gift for performing poetry. There is a species of fungus in the Amazon rainforest that feeds on plastic and can live even without oxygen. Research is already being done to use it to combat pollution. The design of the Sydney Opera House includes 14 roofs of different sizes, and it is said that if they are all combined, they can form a perfect sphere. This design required the invention of new technologies in order to support the structure. Johnny Cash's family refused to allow the famous song Ring of Fire to be used in a hemorrhoid medication commercial. It would take you approximately 18 months to walk the 12,427 miles of the Great Wall of China, the longest structure ever built. There are colorless, opaque rainbows called fog bows because they are formed from fog. Unlike common rainbows, they occur when sunlight passes through tiny water droplets suspended in the air, much smaller than raindrops. For that reason, the colors blur, and the arc appears whitish or gray, creating a more subtle and ghostly effect. Actor Nicolas Cage likes collecting comic books. At one point, he owned a copy of Action Comics #1, which was Superman's first appearance. One of these was once sold for $3.2 million. The keys to the most sacred site in Christianity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was built in the year 325 on the site where Christ is believed to have been crucified, are actually held by two Muslims, which has been a tradition since 1187. Microsoft registered a patent that allows different video devices, such as televisions or the discontinued Kinect accessory, to detect the number of people watching in order to stop video playback and charge more if there are too many viewers. Most of the coal we mine on the planet today originated during a stage millions of years ago in which trees fell but did not decompose, causing the ground to fill with wood, which led to massive fires. This stage ended when organisms such as fungi evolved that eat wood and reintegrate it into the environment. In 1938, Walt Disney received an honorary Oscar for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The statuette he received came with 7 mini statuettes on a stepped base. How cute is that? The award was given in recognition of the film's impact as the first successful feature-length animated movie, marking a before and after in the history of cinema. There is a Justice League comic from 1999 in which a hero eliminates the dictator of a country similar to Iraq, which causes the country to become destabilized and makes the quality of life of the residents worse than it had been before. This is very similar to what happened in Iraq in real life in the following decade. Brian May's father, the guitarist of Queen, helped him build his famous guitar, but at the same time, he was upset because May had abandoned his doctorate. It took 36 years for the guitarist to finally complete his astronomy thesis. In Nepal, there is a festival in which an entire day is dedicated to thanking dogs for their loyalty and service to humans. The Greeks and Romans did not wear pants because they were seen as a symbol of low education and lack of civility, since they were generally worn by barbarians. The first person to use fingerprints on contracts was William Herschel II, who was the son of John Herschel, considered one of the inventors of photography, and also the grandson of William Herschel, the astronomer who discovered the planet Uranus. Baby seahorses eat up to 3,000 pieces of food per day. They have such a voracious appetite because they do not have stomachs, and their digestive system has been described as inefficient, which means they must eat a lot to stay properly nourished. The rules of most airlines require that the pilot and co-pilot eat different meals. This is just in case one of the meals causes food poisoning. This practice reduces the risk of both becoming incapacitated at the same time and is part of broader safety protocols that also include staggered rest periods and constant monitoring during the flight. Euro banknotes of different denominations contain drawings of fictional European architecture that were carefully designed so they would not resemble any real construction, but would still have traditional European characteristics. Shortly afterward, in the Netherlands, they built bridges identical to those on the banknotes, even in the same colors. One of the most searched words on Google is Google. This is often because many people type the name of the search engine directly into the search bar instead of the address bar. In the final track of Pink Floyd's album Atom Heart Mother, a dripping sink can be heard at the end, which on the vinyl edition is recorded in such a way that the needle returns to the previous position and the dripping sound plays continuously until the record is removed. Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire was the first person to propose building the Panama Canal. He said it in 1534. In the movie Captain America: Civil War, During one scene, Hawkeye sarcastically calls Tony Stark the Futurist. In reality, this was a reference to the music album The Futurist, released by Robert Downey Jr. in 2004, which was not well received by critics and had very little success. Approximately 1,500 earthquakes are recorded in Japan each year. This is because the country is located in the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire, a zone with intense tectonic activity where several plates meet and constantly move. For this reason, Japan has developed some of the most advanced earthquake-resistant technologies in the world, including buildings designed to absorb and dissipate the energy of tremors. During World War II, prisoners in Canadian war camps were treated so well that they were given games and entertainment, such as soccer tournaments and musical groups. In fact, when the war ended, many of them did not want to leave Canada. Before building the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the plan was to make an underground tunnel to cross the bay while ships passed above. Even though building the tunnel was cheaper, they ultimately decided to build the bridge because it could serve as a distinctive structure for the region, like a monument. A man once bought a car and put it in his girlfriend's name. When they broke up, he left it illegally parked at an airport. The car accumulated more than $100,000 in fines that the city charged to the ex-girlfriend. That is some revenge. In Germany, there is a retirement home where instead of using dogs, they use therapy alpacas that help make the residents happier. The Guinness World Records organization removed the fat animal categories so that people would stop deliberately overfeeding them. A study conducted by the BBC concluded that 56% of pilots fell asleep during commercial flights, and of those, 29% had woken up and realized that the co-pilot had also fallen asleep. 1 cubic centimeter of human bone can support the weight of 5 pickup trucks. It is 4 times stronger than concrete. There is a plant endemic to Chile called Boquilla trifoliolata that is capable of changing its shape and adapting to resemble the tree it attaches to. It can change color, shape, and orientation to go unnoticed. It is the only plant known with this ability. The Louvre Museum has remained the most visited museum in the world in recent years. After the drop in tourism in 2020, it quickly regained its leadership, reaching around 8 to 9 million visitors annually between 2022 and 2025, solidifying itself as the most visited museum on the planet through 2026. The word cat in most of the most widely spoken languages in the world, such as cat, chat, katze, comes from the Latin felis catus, which means domestic cat. But, for example, in Japanese it is said neko. In this case, there are theories, but it is not actually known exactly how this word originated. Singer Miley Cyrus once exclaimed that she would like to erase the song Wrecking Ball from existence because she will now always be labeled as the Wrecking Ball girl. And she mentioned that her worst nightmare is having that song played at her funeral. Michelle Pfeiffer was adopted by a cult when she was beginning her career that forced her to hand over all the money she earned, but she was expelled when she acted in a movie that dealt with those issues. According to research conducted by economics professors at Emory University, people who spent below average on their wedding and engagement ring had lower chances of divorce. The frequency of a cat's purr is 26 hertz, in case you were wondering. White cardboard Starbucks cups are impossible to recycle because they have a plastic lining on the inside. Bison may seem slow and not very agile, but they can run at 35 miles per hour and jump up to 6 feet high. Despite their large size, they can also change direction with surprising speed, which makes them especially dangerous if they feel threatened. In many natural reserves, visitors are warned to keep their distance, as they can accelerate within seconds and cover ground much faster than it appears. Experts believe that New York is home to up to 800 languages, making it the most linguistically diverse city in the world. This richness is due to centuries of immigration from different regions, creating communities where rare languages and unique dialects are preserved, some of which have disappeared in their countries of origin. Near the city of Tokyo, in Japan, there is an underground water discharge channel. It is a giant space through which water can flow in order to prevent floods. For most of the year, it is a tourist attraction and a filming location. It is part of a flood control system with enormous concrete columns that divert water from nearby rivers during intense storms. The Guinness Brewery originally signed a lease for 9,000 years, in which it paid only £45 per year. In 1921, a Danish geologist discovered a small island in Greenland and named it Kaffeklubben Island, after an informal club at the Copenhagen Museum. At the time, he did not know that he had discovered the northernmost land point on Earth. The Beatles never supported any form of discrimination throughout their career. Their contracts always stipulated that they had the right to refuse to perform for any segregated audience and demanded equality in their shows. During their tours in the United States in the 1960s, they refused to perform in venues with racial segregation, helping to push changes in those practices. During the production of the movie Borat, the FBI opened a file and followed the crew because they had reports from many people who had seen a terrorist in an ice cream truck, who turned out to be the main actor Sacha Baron Cohen. There is no reason why points in tennis go from 15 to 30 and then to 40. Someone came up with it one day, and they just continued without asking why. According to the original voice actor of Bugs Bunny, Mel Blanc, this character was originally going to be called Happy Rabbit, and it is a good thing they changed it, because it probably would have been forgotten over time. The red mushrooms that appear in Nintendo's Mario games are based on a real species of mushroom called Amanita muscaria. They are known for their hallucinogenic properties and can distort the perceived size of objects. This is also the same mushroom referenced in Alice in Wonderland. According to scientific calculations, the next eruption of the Yellowstone supervolcano should have occurred 40,000 years ago, since the last time it erupted was 640,000 years ago, ejecting material thousands of miles away. This phenomenon created what is now known as Yellowstone National Park. The countries of Slovakia and Slovenia are the ones most often confused with each other. It has happened many times that during official visits, the wrong flag is displayed or the national anthem is mixed up. It was even said that staff from both embassies in the city of Washington, D.C. would meet from time to exchange mail that had been sent to the wrong country. Researchers who were training monkeys to recognize themselves in mirrors discovered that the first thing the monkeys did was check all the parts of their bodies they had never seen before, especially the area of their genitals. The researchers found them contorting and spreading their legs in front of the mirror to better see the parts of their bodies they had not previously seen. There is a syndrome called the Tetris effect that occurs when people dedicate so much time and attention to an activity that it begins to shape their thoughts, mental images, and dreams. The term originated from the video game Tetris, when players reported seeing pieces fitting together even outside the game. This phenomenon has also been observed in other repetitive tasks, such as learning a language or practicing music intensely. The first appearance of Charlie Brown and Snoopy in animation was in a 1965 special called A Charlie Brown Christmas. At first, it was rejected by the television network CBS because they did not like that the voices were performed by inexperienced children, and they were not convinced by the anti-consumerist theme. But in the end, it was broadcast. There is a psychological phenomenon called the Chivas Regal effect, in which raising the price of a product without changing its quality causes its sales to increase, since buyers often perceive something more expensive as being of higher quality. The logo of the United States Cyber Command contains a nearly imperceptible 32-character code that is encoded with the 128-bit MD5 algorithm, and when decoded, it spells out the command's motto. There is a law in Germany that prohibits killing invertebrate animals without reason. That is why in all dog shelters in that country, they do not put them to sleep. They do not kill them. In Norway, there are good incentives for people who buy electric cars, such as free parking, free charging, and access to special bus lanes. But since too many people bought electric cars, these incentives are now disappearing. Michael Bay walked out of the theater while watching the movie Friday the 13th from 2009 because it had too many sex scenes. The curious thing is that he produced that movie. In the scene where an alien egg is inspected in the 1979 movie Alien, the prop designers used cow and sheep intestines and stomachs to achieve the ideal effect. The American company Cabot Guns has manufactured the first firearm made almost entirely from a piece of the Gibeon meteorite that crashed into Earth approximately 4,500 million years ago. The meteorite was originally found in Namibia in the 1830s. If you bought a PlayStation 5 in Brazil at launch, the price could far exceed 1,000 United States dollars due to high import taxes, tariffs, and logistics costs. In fact, it would be cheaper to buy a round-trip ticket from Brazil to the United States to purchase it there. There are fake buildings in the city of Paris that were made to cover infrastructure necessary for the city, such as ventilation for the metro and tunnels, and to hide electrical and water installations. Some even have paintings of people in the windows. Wild chimpanzees often look both ways before crossing a road, and according to research from the Paris Museum, 57% of the time they prefer to run to cross quickly and stay safer. The national anthem of Spain, the Marcha Real, has no lyrics. It is one of the few anthems in the world that is performed only with music, which has led to several attempts over the years to add official lyrics, although none have been adopted. Even so, its melody is widely recognized and used in official events and sporting competitions. Yasuo Takamatsu, a 58-year-old Japanese man, began learning to dive in 2014 to find the remains of his wife after she was swept away by the tsunami that struck Japan in 2011. The last time he spoke with her, she told him she wanted to go home, and he wants to fulfill that wish for her. The ancestors of whales from 50 million years ago were land animals and looked somewhat like a mix between dogs and possums, but over the years and generations, they adapted to marine conditions. Fossils such as Pakicetus and Ambulocetus show intermediate stages of this evolution, with functional legs for walking and progressive adaptations for swimming. In 1961, Fidel Castro suspended schools in Cuba for 1 year to form an anti-illiteracy brigade of teachers. When the year ended, more than 700,000 people across the country had learned to read, practically eradicating illiteracy on the island. The pizza chains Domino's Pizza and Little Caesars, two of the largest restaurant chains in the world, were founded less than approximately 19 miles apart in Michigan, United States. To this day, they keep their corporate offices close to each other. In Sweden, blood banks send text messages to blood donors to notify them every time their blood helps save a life. This system was implemented to increase donor motivation and strengthen the connection to the process. Many participants have noted that receiving that message creates a more personal connection to the impact of their donation and encourages them to donate again more frequently. Most apartment buildings in New York City were built with 6 floors because the city's water service could provide enough pressure for water to rise only 6 floors. Taller buildings need their own tank and pumping system. A woman planned to blow herself up with a bomb in Moscow, Russia during the last New Year's celebration using her phone as a detonator. But her plan failed when her phone company sent her a spam message, causing her to explode while she was alone. No one else was harmed except her. According to a study, watching your favorite movie over and over again is good for calming yourself because knowing the outcome of a story allows you to feel safe in a world that is so unpredictable. In 2013, Sean Conway became the first man to swim the entire length of Great Britain. The journey of 870 miles took him 135 days, 90 of which he spent in the water. The rest he spent avoiding bad weather and resting. The actor The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has 2 world records. In 2015, he obtained the record for the most selfies taken in 3 minutes, which were 105, when he was on the red carpet at the premiere of the movie San Andreas, although that record was later surpassed. The other record is more interesting. He is the actor who has been paid the most for his first starring role when he made The Scorpion King and received a payment of $5.5 million. People who prefer to stay awake at night are more likely to have nightmares. Some research suggests that so-called evening chronotypes tend to experience greater anxiety and higher levels of stress, factors that can influence the intensity and frequency of negative dreams. In 2012, a man punched a hole in a $10 million Monet painting, damaging it irreversibly. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison plus 15 months banned from entering art galleries. On January 21, 1977, on his first day in office, President Jimmy Carter fulfilled a campaign promise by granting unconditional pardons to hundreds of thousands of men who had evaded the draft during the Vietnam War by fleeing the country or failing to register. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln grew his famous beard after receiving a letter from an 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell, who said that all ladies liked whiskers and that they would convince their husbands to vote for him for president. Lincoln replied to the letter and soon adopted the distinctive look that would make him even more recognizable. A queen ant can live up to 30 years and can lay millions of eggs throughout its life. Astronomers discovered a giant cloud of gas moving through a supercluster of galaxies. This fireball contains more than 1 trillion suns, measures more than 3 light-years across, and reaches temperatures of billions of degrees. As it moves, it is swallowing entire galaxies. Wow. Wildcats are considered responsible for the global extinction of at least 33 animal species, most of them birds. Anne Hodges of Alabama is the only confirmed person in history to have been struck by a meteorite. On a clear day in November 1954, she was taking a nap on her couch when a piece of black rock the size of a softball crashed through her roof, bounced off a radio, and hit her in the thigh, leaving her with a pineapple-shaped bruise. Ioannis Ikonomou, the chief translator of the European Commission, can speak 32 different languages. His native language is Greek, and he is the only internal translator at the European Commission trusted to translate classified Chinese documents. Turkey broke 14 world records for typing speed between 1957 and 1995. This happened because they designed a keyboard where the most commonly used letters in the Turkish language are positioned according to the anatomy of the hands. Scientists at the Allen Telescope always keep champagne in the refrigerator in case they one day find signs of extraterrestrial life. With a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is, to date, the longest animated movie produced in the United States. In addition, it is the animated film that has involved the most people. There were around 1,000 people involved in its production. In Nashville, Tennessee, United States, there is a themed drive-in theater where you can sit inside a classic car. Dolphins that are stranded on the beach and cannot return to the water actually fled the water because they were sick or injured and are trying to avoid drowning. That is why it is best to call a veterinarian instead of returning them to the sea. The founder of Ford Automobiles, Henry Ford, tried to end the First World War by undertaking what he called a peace voyage to Europe in 1915, along with pacifists and reporters. The mission cost $500,000, and when he arrived, he was received by only 8 people. After this, he canceled the stops he had planned in other cities and returned home instead. Dr. Arthur Lintgen became famous for being able to identify pieces of classical music simply by observing the different textures of a vinyl record, which are what make the needle vibrate and produce sound. When a cat blinks slowly, it means it trusts you completely. On the other hand, if it blinks quickly, you better run. The list of actors who have killed the most people in their movies is led by Mila Jovovich with 1,296. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone are also on the list, but with hundreds fewer. A study conducted by Loma Linda University in 2010 concluded that laughter not only reduces stress, but also increases the production of antibodies and stimulates the activity of the immune system. It has also been observed to improve mood and promote the release of endorphins, contributing to overall well-being and better long-term health. The Westcar Papyrus, a document from ancient Egypt, contains the first known account of magic. In it, King Khufu asks a magician named Dedi to restore life to the heads of a goose, a duck, and an ox, and he manages to do it. Technically, it would be the first magic trick in history. The Hebrew language became extinct as a native language around the year 200. It was revived in Paris in 1881 when a man and his friends agreed to begin conversing exclusively in that language. The keyboardist of The Doors, Ray Manzarek, wrote a book in which he details how the death of vocalist Jim Morrison was actually staged so he could restart his life with another identity. Although in the novel the characters have different names than the real ones, it is obvious what it is about. Harrison Ford had already decided to abandon his acting career during his early years because he only landed small roles and could not afford to support his family, so he chose to become a carpenter instead. During a carpentry job in 1972, he met George Lucas, who invited him to work on the movie American Graffiti, and shortly afterward considered him for the role of Han Solo in Star Wars. The gadget was the first atomic bomb ever made and was tested at Trinity Site, New Mexico on July 16, 1945. The test, codenamed Trinity, was successful, releasing an explosion with the energy of about 20 kilotons of TNT. In 2007, Comet Holmes temporarily brightened to more than 500,000 times its normal brightness. It is the largest phenomenon of this type ever observed. During that brief time, it became the largest observable object in the solar system. The dwarf lantern shark, according to Guinness World Records, is the smallest shark in the world. A male measures only about 6.3 inches in length. It lives in deep waters of the Caribbean and has bioluminescent organs that allow it to emit a faint light, possibly to camouflage itself or communicate in the darkness of the ocean. Its tiny size makes it difficult to study, so many aspects of its behavior are still unknown. There is a hidden beach in the Marietas Islands in Mexico. It was originally formed in 1900 by the Mexican government and used as a bombing site in preparation for World War I. Today, the only way to reach this beach is through a small opening in a cavern wall or by being lowered in by helicopter. The Python programming language is named after the popular British sketch show Monty Python. The creator of this language wanted to give it a unique, mysterious, and short name, and that is what he came up with. Its creator, Guido van Rossum, was a fan of the program and was looking for a friendly and easy-to-remember name when he began developing it in the late 1980s. During a kiss, more than 40,000 parasites and 250 different types of bacteria can be exchanged. In reality, most of these microorganisms are part of the normal oral microbiota and do not pose a danger to healthy people. The Marvel villain Thanos started as a copy of the DC villain Darkseid. Artist Jim Starlin took some inspiration while creating Thanos, but editor Roy Thomas told him to copy him as much as possible. There is a phenomenon known as heteropaternal superfecundation that is so rare that only a handful of cases have been documented in the world. The phenomenon occurs when twins have two different fathers. This can happen if a woman releases more than one egg in the same cycle and they are fertilized by sperm from different men within a short period of time. Although extremely unusual, it has been confirmed through genetic testing in some recent cases. Switzerland has enough nuclear shelters to house 114% of its population. In fact, it is a legal requirement for Swiss residents to have access to a protected place that can be reached quickly from their residence. This policy originated during the Cold War and continues to this day, with shelters integrated into residential and public buildings designed to withstand explosions, radiation, and ensure basic supplies in case of emergency. Dogs often tilt their heads when they want to recognize a word that they associate with an activity, such as going for a walk. If a dog does not tilt its head often, it means it does not focus as much on sound and responds more to visual stimuli. Pill bugs, those little creatures that roll into a ball, are not actually bugs. They are land crustaceans that are more closely related to shrimp than to any insect. Allodoxophobia is the irrational fear of giving or receiving opinions or criticism, and in the era of social media, many people have realized that they have it. When you are sad, you tend to eat more sweet foods because your emotional state can alter your perception of taste. In the same way, things you do not like taste worse. Because pirates began to be seen as entertainment characters for children, there has been discussion about changing the international poison symbol from the skull and crossbones so that it is not associated with pirates. Instead, they want it to be Mr. Uke, a symbol that looks like a disgusted face. There are people who suffer from a psychological disorder called boanthropy, which makes them believe they are cows and attempt to live their lives as cows. There is only one species of warm-blooded fish, the opa, which can weigh up to 110 pounds. The toothpaste that Mr. Bucket, Charlie's father in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, is working on is called Smilex. It is the same name as the substance the Joker uses to poison the city of Gotham in the movie Batman from 1989, also directed by Tim Burton. Scientists placed a type of mold on a map similar to that of the city of Tokyo to see how it would spread, placing food at the points where the main urban centers are located. After one day, the mold created a network almost identical to Tokyo's train system, which was designed to be as efficient as possible. Punt guns are a type of weapon that were first used in 1800. They were used in the commercial hunting of waterfowl, and these weapons fired shots of nearly 1 pound that could kill from 50 to 100 birds in a single shot. The guns had bores of more than 2 inches in diameter, weighed more than 99 pounds, and measured nearly 10 feet in length. Those are some big weapons. There are more tigers in captivity in the United States, with 5,000, than those roaming free in the rest of the world, which are only 3,200. In the wild, these animals have been reduced to only a few thousand due to poaching and habitat loss. International conservation programs aim to protect them, although captive breeding does not always directly contribute to their recovery in the wild. To film the movie Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, they had to change child labor laws in the United Kingdom at the end of the year 2000. They added working hours per week and made schedules more flexible to allow classes on the sets. This was done because a large part of the cast was composed of children and teenagers who had to continue their education during the long filming days. Finnish police found a dead mosquito while inspecting a stolen car. They analyzed the blood from the mosquito's last meal. In that way, they were able to identify the thief. If you tie a plastic bag to the branch of a leafy tree, Clean water will accumulate in a short time, enough to prevent dehydration. It is a good trick if for some reason you are stranded on a deserted island. Intelligent people are more likely to trust others. Some studies in social psychology have found a correlation between higher cognitive ability and higher levels of interpersonal trust. An engineering company in Germany created the first elevator that does not depend on a cable to go up and down. It works with magnetism and can also allow elevators to travel sideways, not just up and down. The first countries to begin recognizing esports video game players as professional athletes in order to simplify their visa process were South Korea, China, and South Africa. Currently, countries such as Russia, Italy, Denmark, Nepal, the United States, Finland, and Germany have also done so. Rabbits are so delicate that they can die as a result of a fright. They are not recommended as pets for children under 12 years of age. Gmail is specifically designed so that you can access it even with the worst possible internet connection. Google considers access to Gmail to be very necessary in case of emergencies.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.